Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from OMD, The Punishment of Luxury. Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark is the unwieldy name of an old new wave band, currently consisting of Andy McCluskey, Paul Humphreys, Martin Cooper, and Stuart Kershaw, going through more than a few lineup changes, in which the former was the only consistent member, though Humphreys is also a founding member who was there for all but 3 albums in the 90s, but whatever. Anyway, these guys aren't just any old synth-pop act. As I've discovered, they were actually one of the first of their kind. Like, Vince Clarke mentions these guys as the kind of thing that got him into electronic music, so that's a pretty big deal. I, of course, decided to tackle these guys upon seeing they had a comeback album out, well, a little bit after that, honestly. But still wanted to follow the pattern of me catching up on prolific new wave legends with my Depeche Mode and Erasure reviews from earlier this year. Those videos were fairly successful, though I ended up with markedly different experiences with these two fan bases. The Depeche Mode fans were fine at first, but got increasingly bitter at the fact that I was a younger person who did not grow up with the band and didn't get it, and it sucks to be young and all the usual dumb YouTube comment section crap you come to expect. And spoilers, I didn't grow up with OMD either, so fair warning there. But the Erasure fans blew me away. Not a single one of them made stupid remarks. They were all polite, and the video went over way better than I expected. I mean, granted, I was also very visibly expecting the fans to be dickheads, and I was self-deprecating the whole time, so I maybe softened the blow, but I still ended up with one of the most astonishingly respectful comment sections I've seen in my life, so, like, seriously, thanks for that, Erasure fans who might be watching this as well. I have a feeling there's probably a fairly significant overlap there. Hopefully I end up with a similar experience out of OMD fans. I won't be holding my breath for it, but whatever. Yeah, as I said, before preparing for this video, I had not heard a single OMD track in my life. You're just getting another total outsider perspective with this review once again. I'm just educating myself more than anything. In fact, as people who watched my Depeche Mode and Erasure reviews would know, I just never had much 80s synth-pop in my life in general. That era doesn't give me the same sense of nostalgia that it seems to for a lot of other people. But regardless, I've been taking it upon myself to educate myself on these old new wave legends when a good excuse like this album arrives. I listen to every album of theirs, as I do for all reviews like this, and here's my thoughts on their discography so far. Definitely can see synth pop in its early form here. I can see the influence that would lead to, like, Cabaret Voltaire's middle period and Depeche Mode Speak and Spell, though I definitely enjoyed this more than the latter. Worth your time both as a part of history and just a solid synth-pop album. More of the same kind of stuff, maybe a bit more polished this time, gets creepier and more out there, experimental, especially near the end with, like, I think it's a instrumental live set at the end of the remastered version. Like, they're really starting to show their range as a band, so yeah, pretty good, I'd say. This is more of the same kind of stuff as last time, combining synth-pop with their more experimental edge. I think it's the one most people seem to agree was, like, the big, classic high point in their career, and, well, I think I might like the last one a little better. This one's pretty good, too. Whoa, this album went way down the experimental rabbit hole. Like, they were really trying to make a Kraftwerk-esque album with full concept and non-musical, sample-based tracks and everything. I like it! A lot! In fact, it's easily my favorite of their albums to date. I kind of wish they'd done more along these lines, though I am not at all surprised this was a commercial flop. Well, this one, perhaps unfortunately, just returns to plain old regular synth pop, but it still does very well for what it is. It's fun, it's catchy, it's well produced. Not sure what else you need. Also, I love the horn sections on this one. Okay, so welcome to the quote-unquote sellout years of OMD, if you want to call it that, in which they moved over their style to a far more commercial and poppy, area than what they'd previously established. I think it's fine for what it is, and I like the inclusion of more traditional drums and guitars, but it's not quite as consistent or interesting as their earlier stuff. Some stuff is cool, but some stuff is downright cheesy. See my thoughts on the previous album, just less memorable or interesting. Probably my personal least favorite of their albums. First album without Paul Humphries on board, and it's pretty bad. Okay, not entirely. There are 3 really good tracks on this thing. Lead single and opener, Sailing on the Seven Seas, the instrumental Apollo 11, and a cover of Kraftwerk's Neon Lights. So, yeah, those 3 are worth your time. I really enjoyed those, but the rest of this album is just, like, bland 4 chords pop that's like Erasure minus the passion. I was kind of expecting their catalog to continually go downhill, but I actually did like this one quite a bit. The arrangements are just stronger, more interesting, and detailed. There's even a Velvet Underground cover and a track with a blatant Barry White sample that, while kinda sorta hilarious, it somehow doesn't feel out of place. I mean, I'm not gonna act like it's high art or anything, but it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one. Between the fact that Andy McCluskey's voice is getting kinda ridiculous sounding, and the fact that this album takes itself super seriously, this was pretty underwhelming. Even a track co-written by Karl Bartos didn't really help. I mean, it's not straight awful, there's some decent variety, solid production, but it was probably a good move for OMD to break up when they did, as it sounded like they were completely out of energy, I believe in their own words. It's a tiring and sad ending to their career in more ways than one. Until it wasn't! In 2010, they decided to reform with their original lineup and turn over a new leaf, start fresh, screw Billboard, and just make good electropop music. And this comeback album is refreshingly energetic. Maybe not quite, Erasure Violet Flame level, even if it does sound fairly similar to that album, and also predates it by 4 years. But it is a lot more fun and respectable than most of their post-junk culture period. Thumbs up, good comeback. And this second album in their comeback period finds them finally returning to their more experimental style as seen on Dazzle Ships. While not quite as out there as on that album, they still have some time for some poppier material as per usual, but thankfully it's poppy in the architecture and morality sense and not in the Pacific Age sense, exploring their Kraftwerky side. In fact, there's actually a ton of Kraftwerk influence here, to the point to some people calling them out as ripping them off. There's even another track by Karl Bartos here. I think the album is enough of its own thing to work fine, though, and it's not like we're gonna get anything like this from Kraftwerk themselves, so yeah, great album. Which brings us to here, and I will say that I've quite enjoyed what I've heard from OMD. Now, I'll have to admit I have my problems with these guys. As you could probably guess, I wasn't crazier about their poppier period from Crushed Universal. I know some people love that stuff, and it is the period of theirs that, actually successfully crossed over to us on the Billboard charts and stuff, so you get a lot of people discovering them then and developing nostalgia there. But, from Mr. Outsider perspective here, I didn't get into it nearly as much as the stuff they were just trying to be more artistic and experimental. Even if they wear their Kraftwerk influence right on their shoulder, I feel like they are able to capture what works best about Kraftwerk in a new era when Kraftwerk were kinda on their way out. And that not only goes for early material like their debut and Dazzle Ships, but more recent material like English Electric. Kind of picking up where they left off. As for their poppier stuff, they admittedly don't strike me as having a solid, well-formed identity in the same way Depeche Mode and Erasure do. Even on early stuff like Architecture and Morality, they sounded somewhere in between those two. Though again, I think they're able to get away with it since, they've been around longer. And more likely were the ones being ripped off instead of the other way around. Well, again, Depeche Mode and Erasure have formed their own sound and identity a lot better later on, while OMD, having sort of started the trends, just kinda kept chasing the trends until it ended up killing them in the late 90s. But despite OMD having unfortunately well-established good and bad periods, for me at least, I don't know about anyone else, but while Depeche Mode and Erasure have had, no set quality pattern, just had a lot of various high and low points. First of all, I think OMD have more keeper albums than Depeche Mode or Erasure, and they also definitely have rebounded the best as of very recently. really. Depeche Mode may have had Delta Machine and Eraserhead Violet Flame, but OMD just seem to want to stay in the lane where they started nowadays, and that's worked out well for them. I'm sure there's gonna be people they're about to yell, "Hey, why are you doing so many comparisons between these new wave acts that you really shouldn't be doing? They're not even in the same ballpark, and you just need to judge the artists by themselves." Or maybe not, but because of course they're in the same ballpark, but you know, it's all just thoughts I felt I need to put out there since I marathoned all their discographies in the same year. But now it's finally time to actually talk about The Punishment of Luxury, the reason why you probably actually clicked on this video in the first place. From the looks of it, it seemed like they were basically going to give us a continuation on English Electric with this thing, judging from some reviews and comments I'd caught here and there. Possibly a little more pop this time. And, hey, I really liked English Electric, so that sounded cool to me, so how'd it turn out? Well, it's not so much a continuation of English Electric as it is basically the exact same album again. There's no shift in focus or anything, it's basically just a straight rehash in almost every way of their previous album, at least sonically and production-wise. I mean, just like with the last album, I did enjoy the retro Kraftwerk-inspired pastiche and its fresh modern take on the sound, but here it's harder for me to give as high a recommendation when they literally just did an album like this a couple of years ago that executed the sound a little bit better, in my opinion. On top of that, there are moments on here where the Kraftwerk influence gets a little too on the nose. And not like Metroland and Decimal from the previous album, you know, kinda sorta resembling Europe Endless and Numbers a little bit, respectively. No, there's one track on this one called Kiss 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 Bang Bang Bang, which is not a good title. But here it becomes less like Kraftwerk pastiche and more like straight uncredited sampling. I mean, I'm sorry, this track is literally Europe Endless mashed up with Antenna, and it is ridiculously blatant. Like, come on, guys. Try harder than that. Do you want Ralph and Florian to sue you? Because they absolutely could over this one. God. Alright, I will admit, the rest of this isn't even close to that bad, but the title track did sound like it was about to reference Kraftwerk right at the beginning, like, "The punishment of luxury is in the air for you and me? No, for all to see." Faked me out a little bit there. Anyway, now there is one area in which I think The Punishment of Luxury improved on English Electric, and weirdly enough, I think it's in the lyrics and themes. Previous album wasn't really about the lyrics. There was some talk of the future and stuff, but the sound and production was clearly the focus. Or maybe it did have more meaningful lyrics, and I just wasn't listening. Because that's not the one I'm reviewing right now, but you don't come to this channel for lyrical analysis, guys. But I'm gonna give this one my best shot. I read on the Wikipedia page that according to McCluskey himself, the idea behind the title is like a critique on modern society. Like, you know, first world problems, how a lot of problems we go through are because some advertisers or PR people told us we're supposed to worry about it. Like dependence in technology and all that kind of stuff. It's actually kind of a neat idea too, and actually pretty relatable given that I just sent my laptop in for repairs for a week, so... and it's an idea they revisit on a lot of other tracks other than just the title track, like Precision and Decay, and Isotype, La Mitrailleuse, Kiss 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 Bang 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 2, one of the good things about that track. Possibly a tiny bit on Art Eats Art and Robot Man as well, but it's kinda oblique. I mean, it's a loose concept. There are a lot of tracks that just sound like they're relationship and love and breakup songs and, you know, don't connect to the theme, but it's cool that there is that noticeable overarching theme at all. Now, in terms of individual tracks, generally I will say, again, like with English Electric, I preferred the weirder tracks over the poppier tracks. But even here, the weirder tracks had some kind of catchy melody or hook attached to them that was surprisingly really effective. Robot man, robot man, robot man, got me running as fast as I can. Art is art. Bend your body to the will of the machine. In fact, that might be another way this album outdoes English Electric. I did find the melodies in general to be more memorable, catchier than that album, though this also could just be due to the fact that I've listened to it a lot more. You know, it could be otherwise, but I'll give a thumbs up on it regardless. The only track that didn't even really try sticking in your head was Precision and Decay, although I did really like the more experimental Dazzle Ships vibe, and it's not like there was no melody at all. As for the more straightforward poppier tracks, I will say that all of these hit the mark pretty well too. The title track and Isotype are both catchy and driving, having that epic and futuristic but lighthearted and hopeful vibe. One More Time does this as well, but not quite as memorable, in my opinion. And As We Open, So We Close is an interesting ballad that has a really rough and aggressive vibe. Might be slightly influenced by like modern dubstep and that kind of stuff. I mean, they did a couple of songs that sounded like this on English Electric too, most notably Our System, but it was still enjoyable here too and added variety, and I liked the more industrial flair that this one had. And as for the ballads, they may not all be catchy, but they're all really good and carry the emotional power as needed. What Have We Done is the catchiest. What have we done? But the last two tracks, Ghost Star and The View From Here, do carry an orchestral quality to them that really helps them make them more impactful. Ghost Star especially. I mean, far from the first time orchestral maneuvers in the dark make tracks that sound orchestral. But yeah, it's something I'm always going to enjoy. So yeah, that's basically it as far as individual tracks go. Overall, I definitely have my issues with this album. As I said, they rehash the same kind of sounds that were on their last album, and what was once cool retro's pastiche goes maybe a bit too far in some areas. I'm a little more peeved at them ripping off themselves than I am at ripping off Kraftwerk, but, you know. But out of the three new wave comebacks that I've reviewed this year, between Spirit, World Begone, and this, Punishment of Luxury is easily the best of the three. I haven't listened to either Spirit or World Begone since reviewing them, and I imagine it's gonna stay that way. Spirit was well produced, but was so bleak and depressing I never wanted to listen to it again. And World Begone had a good message that was well timed for me personally, but didn't really offer anything outside of that message. The Punishment of Luxury isn't a political album, and doesn't try to present itself as super important or meaningful, despite being, you know, maybe kinda cool, subtle social commentary. But for all my issues with this album and its lack of originality, the main thing that this album tries to achieve is just be a fun listen. And I will say it succeeds in that regard. I can actually see myself coming back to this in the future, and I would say it's worth my recommendation. This was pretty good. Check it out. I'm overall feeling a 7.5 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.